Welcome to the video answer key for the bass clef lines and spaces lesson 3 workbook. I'll be completing the workbook in real time so you can follow along and check your answers. Let's get started. Okay, the first section asks you to draw a note on the staff as indicated. Oh, let me not forget, please put your name and your date and the date at the top. We're dealing with the bass clef lines and spaces. I already did the first section, but I'll go over it. The first question, they ask you to put a note on the fourth space. Here is my fourth space note. Note on the fourth space. Then the third line, my note is on the third line. First space, my note is on the first space. First line, you can see my note is on the first line. Fifth line, you can see my note is on the fifth line. Second line, you can see I drew a note on the second line. Second space, you can see the note here is on the second space. Third space, you can see the note here is on the third space. Fourth line, you can see the note here is on the fourth line. And the third line, you can see the note here on the third line. Okay, you can check your answers. Okay, the next section. Write the note's letter name in the box provided below. So we have to write the note's letter name in the box provided below. Okay, the first one is done for us. They have note A, which is the first space. I went ahead and did mine already. You can check your answers. The next note is on the third line, which is note D. Good boys do, good burritos do, or your musical alphabet. You have all kind of options to help you learn the letter names of the bass clef staff. We have a note here on the fourth space, note G, and they're asking what is the letter name of the note on the second line, which is B, G, B. Then we have the first note that's given to us, which is G, and we have a space note on the second space, note C. Then we have a note on the fourth line. We have a note here on the fourth line, which is F. We should also know that that F line is the line that splits the two dots, also known as our F-Clef. That's also a hint. And we have a space note here on the third space, which is note E. All cows eat, or your musical alphabet, A, C, E, G, if we were counting up to the fourth space. Here we have a note on the fifth line, which is A, and we have a note here on the space, the first space note, which is note A. Moving along, we have a note here on E, which is on the third space. They gave us that answer. And here we have a note on the second space, which is note C. Good. Now we have a note here on the fourth line, which is G. Fourth space, my apology. This is note G. And then we have a note here on the first space, note A. Good. Now we have a note here on the third line, note D. And we have a line note on the second line, note B. And we have a note here on the fourth line, which is F. We talked about that already, that F line that splits the two dots. This is also known as the F-Clef. And here we have the first line note, which is note G. And we have a space note on the second space, note C. And we have a line note on the third line, note D. You can check your answers. Let's continue to the next page. Okay, so here we have a note that they gave us, note G, which is on the first line. And the next note is on the fourth space, which is note G. And then they gave us the third note on the third line, which is note D. And they're asking about the second space, which is note C. And now we have a note here on the fourth line, which is F. And we have to figure out what is the letter name of this note on the third space, which is note E. And they gave us the first space note, which is note A. And we have to answer the fifth line note here, which is note A. And we have note B here on the second line. And here we have to figure out what is the letter name of this fourth line note, which is note F. You can check your answers. Okay, our next section, using the words below, draw a note on the staff that represents each letter. So we have age. I put my note here on the first space. I put my note here on the first line for G. And I put my note here on the third space for E. Okay, now there's other variations. You could have put a note A here on the fifth line. That is also acceptable. You have different variations. Okay, and here we have bad. I put my note here on B. I put my note here on A, fifth line. And I put my note here on the third line, note D, for bad. You can check your answers. Fade. I put my note here on the fourth line for F. I put my note here on the second space for A. I could have also put my note here on the fifth line. Okay, I also put my note here on the third line for D, and I put my note here on the third space for E. Let me just go back here and remind you that if you put your note G on the first line, you could have also put your note G on the fourth space for G as well. Both are acceptable. So you can pick. Next we have dead. I have my note here on the third line for D. I have my note here on the third space for E. I have my note here on the first space for A. And I have my note here on the third line for D. Again, if you put your note A on the first space, you could have also put your A note on the fifth line for A. Here I put my note B here on the second line. I put my note here on the first space for note A. You could have also put your note on the fifth line for A. I put my note here on the third line for D. I put my note here on the first line for G. You could have also put your note G on the fourth space. And I put my note here on the third line for note E, badge. Then we have begged. Then we have my note here on the second line for note B. I have my note here on the third space for E. I have my note here on the first line for G. And then I put my other G on the fourth space. You could have put either combination. And here I have my note on the third space for E and my note D on the third line. You can check your answers. Okay, our next section, write the note's letter name in the box provided below. Okay, so now we have to write both answers. So here we have a note on the third line, and you should know that's note B. Here we have a note on the second space, that's note C. Here we have a note on the first space, that's note A. Here we have a note on the fourth line, that's note F. Here we have a note on the third space, that's note E. Here we have a note on the second line, that's note B. Here we have a note on the fourth space, that's note G. Here we have a note on the first line, that's note G. Here we have a note on the fourth space, that's note G. And here we have a note on the first line, that's note G as well. So you kind of have a repeat there. Here we have a note on the third line, note D. And here we have a space note on the third space, note E. Here we have a note on the fifth line, note A. Here we have a note on the second line, note B. Here we have a note on the fourth line, note note F. This fourth line is note F. Here we have a note on the second space, note C. So you can check your answers. Okay, let's look at the next section. Draw the note according to its letter name. Use line or space notes. Okay. Here they want us to draw the note for note B. And I have my note on the second line. Next, you'll see we have to provide the note for note E. And I have it here on the third space. Next, we have G. I have my note here on the first line. And next, we have note F, which I have here on the fourth line. Next, we have note D. I have my note here on the third line. Next, we have note C. I have my space note here on the second space. Next, we have note A. I have my note here on the first space. Of course, you could have put your note here on the fifth line, and that goes for the G. So depending on where you place your notes, you can check your answers accordingly. Here we have note F, and I put my note here on the fourth line. Next, we have note E. I have my note here on the third space. Next, I have note C, which is a space note on the second space. Next, we have note F, which I have my note here on the fourth line. Next, I have note G here on the fourth space. Again, you could have placed your note here on the first line. Both are correct. Next, I have my note here on the fifth line for note A. You could have also put your note on the first space as well. Both are correct. Next, we have note B. I have my note here on the second line, and then I have my note F on the fourth line, and then we have our note D on the third line. You can check your answers. Nice work.